Now, how do you unlock the potential investment that's buried deep inside Nigeria's creative industries, investment that's lain dormant for decades? Well, the Minister of Arts, Culture, Tourism and the Creative Economy, Hanatu Musawa, seems to know how to do it. She's promised that her ministry will deliver 2 million jobs and contribute $100 billion, not naira, dollars, to Nigeria's economy by 2030, just 5 years from now. To be fair, Nigeria's creative economy is promising. Just look at the music and film industries and the enormous clout they're currently packing internationally, and the subsequent global cultural influence they've bestowed on this country, as well as the number of jobs they've created and the money they're raking in. But $100 billion in 5 years? How the devil do they intend to pull that one off? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the Minister of Art, Culture, Tourism and the Creative Economy, Barrister Hanatu Musawa. How nice to see you again.
Thank you, Mr. Charles, for having me on the show again. Thank you.
And you've been leading a very ambitious drive for growth in the sectors under your ministry. We're told that you've been mapping priority areas, aligning interventions, attempting to unlock investment across Nigeria's creative industries. I've seen your document that shows the route to harnessing the potential in that economy. It looks very thorough. But briefly, can you translate all that into real terms for us and how that is going to deliver 2 million jobs and $100 billion by 2030?
Well, thank you again for having me on the show, Mr. Charles. Before I start, I must say that it's with a great sense of loss and grief that I want to mourn the death of Alhaji Aminat Ntata, who we lost recently. He was a behemoth of a man, a gentleman that really contributed immensely, not only to his own immediate community, but to Nigeria. And I just want to extend my condolence to the family. And his shoes can never be filled, but we shall continue to pray for him and hope that one day the impact that he has had on Nigeria will really continue to be felt.
Amen.
Right. So I think you asked at the beginning, you said, how the devil would they do that? Well, Mr. Charles, the devil is in the details, right? So absolutely. From the very get-go, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was very committed in ensuring that he diversified this economy. He is a man that is really focused on building a strong economy for Nigeria. And you know, the easiest way that he felt we could do that was in the creative economy. So in building this this ministry, he said that we have to contribute immensely to increasing the GDP. So like, I think I've mentioned it before, you know, we did a deep dive and a very thorough interrogation of what other clients have been able to do working together with the Boston Consulting Group. And that was where we were able to come up with that arithmetic number based on the local translation that we had of the content that we have to offer from Nigeria, that we can be able to hit increasing the GDP by $100 billion by 2030. Now, it's very easy when you look at what they have done in other countries. Something as simple as policies, right? Policies that should have been put in place that help us to sort of capture the value. Intellectual property policy, I've spoken about that many times.
I was coming to intellectual property.
Right.
Because, I don't mean to interrupt you, but one of the big issues in this country, and I'm glad you identify, and you identify that quite, you know,
early on.
Yeah, substantially in your document there. One of the big issues in this country which could undermine everything you're trying to do is intellectual property. I studied intellectual property law, so that's an area that is very dear to my heart. If piracy continues as it has in the past, and financial value, as you correctly pointed out in that document, does not flow back to the creators, then it affects everything from job creation to distribution platforms, everything, but you don't control the entire chain that's required to strengthen copyright.
Yeah.
You have to depend, for instance, on law enforcement,
Yes.
cyber security, all kinds of things. How is the process of strengthening copyright enforcement coming along?
So what I know is in order for us to hit any of our targets, obviously, we have to look at interdependencies with
Absolutely.
other MDAs. And as you rightly pointed out, the copyright. So we're working closely with the Ministry of Justice to ensure that in tandem with coming up with a robust and intricate intellectual property policy, we ensure that copyright is also sort of taken care of. That value that you keep on speaking of, we are losing immense value purely because we do not have these policies in place.
Indeed.
So that is part of one of the details. Like I said, the devil is in the detail. So we have been working from the get-go to ensure that we do a proper, holistic, straight stakeholder engagement with players in the industry,
Right.
so that we have proper input from everyone. So we have, together with the former Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Minister Doris, who we started working on. I think the reason why there has been some delay in us rolling out the intellectual property was, as you would know, at the end of last year, just as we were about to take that particular document of the intellectual property to the Federal Executive Council for approval, there was a reshuffle in government.
Right.
And so we had a new Minister of Trade and Investment, Minister Jumoke, who came in. So obviously, there was that handover stage. But I really must say, and I have to give kudos to Doris, who did a majority part of the work. So, we have been, we have all inherited together, myself, together with Minister Jumoke, and together with the Ministry of Justice, this document for intellectual property. And hopefully, we have already prepared a memo which is going to be presented by the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment to the Federal Executive Council. So hopefully, within the next couple of weeks or so, we should have delivered intellectual property. And like I said, we're also working in tandem, pari passu, with the Ministry of Justice to ensure that in terms of copyright, all that value that we continue to lose is brought back. So that is part of the impact that you're going to see in terms of what we're contributing,
Right. But
building
of course,
the GDP.
failure to properly get IP to work,
Yeah.
that's going to lead to you losing a lot of stuff.
Yes,
I mean, a lot of the
absolutely.
impacts you're hoping you can make, they'll just disappear.
And this is why I said the interdependencies. We understand as a government that we are not working in silos. So everything that I do in terms of the deliverables that I'm giving from what the President has already mandated has to be done together with other MDAs in tandem. For example, the tourism. So tourism, anything that we're putting in place with tourism, we have to work with aviation, with the Ministry of Interior. So this is really the approach that we're having. So, back to how we hope to hit that target of $100 billion increase in the GDP. So you have the policies in place, then you have the infrastructure. Nigeria has a huge dearth of infrastructure, and as you would have seen in my document, and hopefully it's something that will be unveiled to the nation.
Can we
at large.
actually, we're seeing the document now on the screen, but keep talking.
Okay, so infrastructure, there's no infrastructure. So we are working to deliver one, creative hubs, because it's the creative hubs that gives the players in the industry within the different communities the ability to have some capacity building, right? So these creative hubs, we are starting with pilots, one in Lagos, one in Abuja, and one in Katsina State. It's going to be extended to Enugu State, one in Kwara State, and I think one in Akwa Ibom. And then hopefully this will be extended to every other state. Maybe another minister one day will inherit, this infrastructure.
But that thing is good. That's going to cost a lot of money, though, isn't it?
But yes.
You're talking about building new hubs, you're talking about creative cities.
So the creative city is separate. Now I spoke only about the hubs.
Right.
So the hubs, we are working together with the French Treasury. We have been able to raise funding from the French Treasury. So in terms of...
what kind of funding have you been able to raise?
So it's 100 million euros. 100 million.
That's a lot
euros.
of money.
That is a lot of money.
Yeah.
So in terms of what we are, and the ministry has been able to do that purely on the interest that the global community has in the Nigerian content and creativity. So in terms of the hubs, we'll be able to deliver that. And one of the things that has really impeded the ministry, obviously, is lack of funding. As a nation, of course, we are going through challenges of funding. So, you know, the ministry has really had not much support in terms of funding, but we've had to be very creative because Mr. President is very committed, and you know, he is focused on ensuring that we deliver these jobs. And in order for us to deliver these jobs, we have to put the infrastructure in place. We have an arena which we've already commissioned here, not commissioned, we've broken ground. Hopefully in the next 6 months here in Abuja. We're working on an arena in Lagos. There's a number of infrastructure projects. Of course, the Creative City, which we already signed an MOU for, museums. So these are some of the infrastructure. If we had the funding in place and I had access to the funding, we would have delivered all these infrastructure projects.
So perhaps
now.
what your document should say is, if we have the funding, if all the other ministries and agencies that we depend on, from the police to the aviation, if they do their part, we will be able to deliver $100 billion.
But if as government you approach matters like that, then we're going to be a government that is not going to deliver.
Yeah, but the problem is that people are going to say to you in 2030, you said you'd deliver $100 billion.
So that is a challenge for me to ensure that by 2030 we make that delivery. I've just been given the marching orders and the mandate from the president to deliver, and this I must do. So by 2030, what you see in this document, with the will of God and the will of the support of Mr. President, we will be able to deliver on these promises.
What about job creation? Because that's an essential part of not just the creative economy, but the overall economy. I mean, the Nigerian economy, unemployment is crippling, you know, the lives of so many people. You're talking about 2 million jobs in 5 years. What kind of jobs? Are we talking about sort of full-time jobs, part-time jobs, you know, people sort of in and out, you see what I mean? Yeah,
so, you know, jobs, this is very fundamental for Mr. President. He knows there's a growing population and a young population, 70%, under the age of 18. And a lot of these young people are growingly becoming disillusioned because they don't have jobs. So this particular ministry is mandated to ensure that we deliver those jobs. What kind of jobs? Is jobs. Jobs are jobs. Jobs is across the full value chain. So for example, if you're able to put an infrastructure project that allows one person in a community to have the capacity building that will allow them to use that for jobs or to create value for themselves, that is a job within the value chain. And then of course, if we have the ability, the funding, of course, I've not spoken about the funding. This is absolutely key and fundamental. One of the areas that I think the creatives have really suffered, or the creative industry has suffered in terms of its potential to grow, is that there has been no funding for the creatives. Mr. President approved a memo sometime last year, was it, I think early this year, the Creative Economy Development Fund. So as the ministry, we have set up 2 special purpose vehicles, one for the infrastructure, one for the funding, and we have been able to raise or get a commitment from a Frexim Bank of $200 million. So that $200 million we are putting into the Creative Economy Development Fund. We just closed up applications because we did ask for applications, people within the creative sectors.
Right.
We're analysing those. So when you have funding, for example, of one person able to access that funding, there are many jobs that are going to be created down that value chain from that job. Someone in my state of Katsina State is going to be able to use perhaps that funding to have a makeup studio and is going to employ people. So this is these are jobs that are being created from the ecosystem that we hope to create from the initiatives that we have.
I noticed that fashion design was kind of top of the pecking order there.
Yeah, because Mr. Charles, everybody that came into this room came in clothed. That's fashion. So fashion is very important. And every single community that you go to, there is a fashion designer, no matter how rural or urban, it's fashion. It's fashion. So fashion is also an expression of who we are as a people. So, you know, fashion is very key. And so fashion is one of those areas that we want to be able to empower, because it's one of those areas that has the ability to reach all the different areas of Nigeria.
Tell us about your approach to this job of Minister of Arts, Culture, Tourism and the Creative Economy. I mean, they're all related, but that's a lot of portfolios.
Yeah.
I mean, because it sounds like it is more than a job to you. I mean, every time I talk with you, there's a lot of passion there. It sounds like it's a mission for you, more than just a job, to get Nigeria from where it is today to where it can stand with the best of them and be respected with regard to tourism and the creative economy and all the rest of it. Is it more than a job to you?
It is. I would, first of all, it is a job to me, because this is what the mission and vision and the mandate that I've been given by the president. So there's that. What it is to me is my identity, is my value, is my heritage, is my ideal as a Nigerian. That is who we are as a people. Is our culture. That's who we are. No matter where we go to, is about the culture. And the creativity comes out from the culture. So I see beauty in this. This diversity that we speak of 240 different tribes, right? This is the worth, this is the value, this is what makes us unique as a people. And so this portfolio that I have been given is the perfect personification of that. So it is very important for me as a Nigerian who wants to contribute their quota to Nigeria, to immerse myself in the culture, in the ability for people, no matter where they are in Nigeria, to relate to me, because I'm representing them, because I see them in me, if you understand.
But I mean, just tell us a bit more about the drive to carry out this mission. I mean, is it your personal and professional experiences that have shaped your approach? I mean, you are a lawyer and a politician, but most people don't know that you're also an author
and an artist.
I mean, you draw, but I mean, I could certainly relate to the art bit, because I've seen some of the artwork that you've done. I mean, remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is. I think one of the things that the president did was he wanted someone who lived in that world. And, you know, for me, it took a while for me to understand why this was a portfolio that he gave me. But I think because I live in that world, you know, I feel the pulse of that world. I have a passion for art. I have a passion for music. I have a passion for, I've written 2 songs in my life. Sometime in the past, I do poetry. So it is part of my own ecosystem. So I have a vested interest to ensure that I do right by the industry, because when I'm done with this job, because it is a transient job, that is where I'm going to go back to, is either law or back to my base, which is somewhere in the creative industry.
So which of those 2 do you prefer? I mean,
I don't know. That's like, it's both. I love the law, and I think both can complement each other.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. So I mean, I know we've kind of deviated from what we were talking about initially, but just remind us of what your overarching vision for the development of tourism, arts, culture, the creative economy is in Nigeria.
So the first thing is, like I said, the economic growth. We want to contribute very effectively and very impactfully to the economic growth of this country by contributing that $100 billion increase in the GDP. And I honestly believe with the data mapping that we've done, because a lot of the projections that we've had in the past, one of the areas that has always been missing is there has been no data to support it. So we have carried out a very ambitious data mapping exercise, which we have completed. I have it right here.
So we have it actually. I saw that earlier.
And I'm so elated to know that the numbers, that the projections that we had, it looks like we're even going to be able to hit above those targets if we're able to put those variables in place. So, you know, based on the data, you know, we are going to be able to hit at least 2 2.7 million jobs by 2030. In the event that I'm able to do my part in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the interdependencies of the MDAs. Hopefully, I'm working together with Bosun, for example. We need the digital tools to be able to do some of these things. So yes, I do agree with your statement at the beginning that, you know, some of these is many moving parts. And because you don't have control of those every moving part. You know, you can only take responsibility for your own. But, you know, like I said, the approach that I have is I have a mandate to deliver this specific, those jobs, 2.72 million jobs by 2030, increasing the GDP, global soft power, changing the narrative and repositioning Nigeria, which we've already done with Destination 2030, Nigeria Everywhere. So you're going to see Nigeria everywhere, and we continue to take Nigeria to every corner of the world to show, you know, what we have to offer in terms of our content. And of course, you know, to use it as a tool for unity as well. I'm going to announce a project very soon that we hope is going to again leverage on the creative industry to see how we can find some solace of unity as a people, and maybe it can even have different effects in you know, a plethora of benefits such as the insecurity. I think we can even make a difference in the insecurity. And I spoke to you in the last time I saw you about building destinations, you know, sort of driving the tourism narrative through those destinations as they do in Mexico with Cancun. Now, if you do that, that's another job creation, and then you create this ecosystem. People who live in the area take ownership of those destinations. They want to protect the destination. So all that has positive effect in insecurity, and like I said, for a plethora of reasons, job creation, economic growth, and what have you.
Well, I mean, listening to you, I mean, it just sounds like there's so much for you to do, and there's so many portfolios. I mean, do you sort of wake up in the morning, oh my God, tourism, oh my God, the arts?
No, because I think
you see what I mean? And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, I wonder how much trying to turn that vision, all those visions, into reality challenges and perhaps even overwhelms you sometimes.
It doesn't overwhelm me because it isn't different portfolios. They're all interconnected. The reason why people want to come into for tourism is because of the content, whether it's the landscapes or the culture. The reason why you want to export Nigeria, right, is it's interconnected. Even before the ministry was merged, I was working very closely with the former Minister of Tourism, because you're not going to be able to drive creative or drive some sort of a cultural diplomacy without talking about tourism. You're going to other people's country, you want to invite them back. So invariably, I think those portfolios belong together. So I don't see them as exclusively different.
Yeah, I see what you mean. They're interwoven.
They're interwoven, so you have to approach everything with the same sort of vision of bringing everything together.
And I've just heard of something that you premiered recently called Hanny's Mic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, tell us about that, because I saw an episode. I thought it was quite interesting.
Yeah, it's a podcast. I mean, you know, you have to, like you said, you have to immerse yourself with the time. And, you know, the podcast is the new radio. I remember when I was young, they said radio, you know, the TV was the radio star, and, you know, it went to CDs. Now it's podcast. So, you know, I'm having podcasts or interviews or discussions, just conversations with players within the tourism, the creative and the cultural industries. And we have some really interesting lineups. And, you know, I hope it will help to enlighten, it will help to bring a lot of inspiration, and, you know, it will help to bring their stories to the fore. And also it will help to bridge a divide between the industry and government. So that's
I thought it was very interesting, actually. I think it's the first episode.
Yeah, I've got about two, but I think the next one is dropping next week.
Okay, well, I mean, let me, because I know we've talked about you as a Minister of Arts, Creative Economy, Tourism, all the rest of it. We've talked briefly about you as a lawyer, and I suppose the intellectual property thing is sort of related to being a lawyer. But we haven't talked about you as a politician. And we're in the throes of politics at the moment in Nigeria. There seems to be this kind of resurgence of interest in politics with the opposition coalition, ADC, coming to the fore and all the rest of it. And the other day we had the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 election, Yusuf Dati Baba Ahmed, who laid into the vice president, Shetima, and sort of made some fairly strong statements about him, and you had wanted to respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite unfortunate, you know, many of us in politics are somewhat interrelated, and I think if there's 2 or 3 people that I would say I'm closest related, we call each other brothers, but if there's 2 or 3 people that I would identify as people of my close family, I think Datti would be one of them. We come from the same community. We come from a people that have brought us up with a pedigree of integrity, of empathy, of truth, of fairness.
Well, he certainly seems to have a lot of integrity.
Well, I'm not sure from what
that's
he
the way
said.
he comes across.
Yeah, but from what
he's just outspoken.
No, from what he said, it was. See, in politics, Mr. Charles, all of us, there's nothing that they don't say. A lot of it expanded truths, a lot of it lies, right? If you come and you want to talk about another politician, you do so based on issues and facts. But when you come up with gossip and lies and beer parlor talk, I think that is a real deviation from the values and the pedigree and the virtue and the integrity that my parents and Datti's parents brought us up. I was ashamed, and I was very disappointed. And Datti, more than anyone, knows. He was sat, I think it was here or in another interview 2.5 years ago, while he was contesting, and he shed tears because people in the political space had attacked his own parents, who are my parents as well. And that was very hurtful to me. And when I saw him react in that way, I was hurt as well, because that's an extension of my own family. Datti has to remember that Shetima himself has children and has a wife. If he wanted to attack the vice president based on issues, that is fair enough, because all is fair in politics. But for him to have come up, what was he trying to say? Nobody understood what he was trying to, I didn't know what he was trying to say. He was trying to make insinuations, very, very dangerous insinuations, based on lies. And I think that is a real shame. It is. And I think at this point, Datti needs to either apologize to Mr. Vice President or to articulate what it was he was trying to say. And if he can't, because he said it was not for the airways. I think he said it was not for the airways.
He said it wasn't for the airways, but he said he was impressed with President Tinubu for having kept him for this long.
Well, as he tried to bully his way through to a monologue in a conversation that you were having, that is not the Datti that I knew. And it is very disappointing to see that he had betrayed the values that both him and I had been brought up with. And I think for what he did that day, Datti needs to hold his head down in shame.
Well, I want to thank you for speaking as forthrightly as you have, just as Datti does. And it's very interesting. So obviously you guys...
That's family.
Different sides of the same
one
coin.
Family.
Yeah, very interesting. Minister, I want to thank you very much indeed for
Mr.
coming
Charles,
in. And please come back and talk to us again. Barrister Hanatu Musawa is the Minister of Art, Culture, Tourism and the Creative Economy. Good to see you again.
Thank you.